it upon request? I imagine that only those businesses that don't know about the program would not opt into that. So it doesn't seem inherently fair.
Councillor Zadok, we did it from an on-request situation to be able to just manage the risk associated with the revenue decline as a result of waiving that. We really want to just make sure that we're helping businesses who are looking for the help.
Okay, so what percentage of businesses do you expect would request a 50% reduction to get to that 3.1 million figure?
At this time, we don't have a forecast for that, but what we have done for the revenue forecast is we've assumed that all could possibly ask for that between June 1st and December 31st.
Okay.
And then as we go, we'll have a better indication of that, and in the fall supplementary operating budget, we can provide a better forecast on what that would look like.
But it's probably correlated with the more you advertise this program, the more business will take you up on it, which is, if that's the case, and if that's what you believe, I think we should advertise it quite widely, because after the fact, if a business wasn't aware that this was available to them, I think that's a bit unfair. But I get why you're taking this approach. So I'll just leave it at there and possibly come back for other questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Councillor McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. McCabe, just following up on Councillor Henderson's questions about the difficult challenge of picking winners with our grants. First of all, do you have the confidence that your group has the capacity to do that, or will you be looking at perhaps some outside expertise as well to predict what the future's bringing?
Well, Councillor McKean, the group has been actively working with businesses throughout this process, and so they've got a lot of inputs from businesses. But I will let Mr. Chase add to this, because they do have a group that will review them.
Just to add to that, Councillor McKean, we do have an internal group that will be reviewing the grants, but we're taking the advice and input of our partners, including the business improvement areas, the Chamber, Edmonton's Independent Hospitality Group, to get their insights as well into these sorts of things.
Thanks. No, that's good to hear. My reading on this is that there's still a lot of Canadians who are wary about heading out to perhaps a restaurant or coffee shop that's open under the new conditions. And I just wonder if we see the city having a communications role or with businesses that have committed to, high practices, sanitary practices, using masks, all that stuff. Do we have a role to let people know they can leave home and go to local business?
Councillor McKean, I do know some of our messaging has shifted from stay home to stay safe, and if Ms. Owen's on the phone, perhaps she could add to that.
I'll happily do so. We haven't at the moment contemplated highlighting particular establishments that are doing a particularly good job of adhering to the safety protocols. That's something that we can certainly think about. I think it's more likely fitting for the things that are open website, which is arm's length from the City of Edmonton, to highlight those who are adhering to those protocols well. And we are, as you know, a sponsor of that.
Yeah, I think there's a real challenge, but I think for the average person, they'd want to know that restaurant or clothing shop they're going into is taking this seriously, and that starts to build on itself the more people go out and we're safe, then they'll feel safer going in coming months. So anyways, that's good to hear, Katrin. I think that's a real challenge, but I hope we think about our communications role in and around staying safe and encouraging business, perhaps to be part of a program or something where they're committed to safety as well, to build that confidence.
We'll definitely think about that. Our focus thus far has been on encouraging local, attending local businesses and less of a focus on chains, obviously.
Right. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Councillor Paquette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to say thank you for this presentation. Thank you for all of this hard work. It's wonderful and very much appreciated. And I'm sure that a number of businesses in our city are going to be extremely grateful for this. It's a great move. I do have a question. We know that right now, during COVID, during almost any recession, that underrepresented folks or women are the ones who generally feel the impacts more. So I'm just wondering if there was thought given to having another criteria or to bake criteria into item number 3 or bullet point number 3 for GBA plus or underrepresented folks or for businesses that ask applicants how their applications will aid underrepresented individuals.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Paquette. We did take a GBA Plus lens to developing the work, and the rollout of the proposed grant would enable, we plan to reach out to underrepresented groups or groups that struggle to access these types of city programs to make sure that people have the ability to apply, that it's easy for them to do so. That said, we could consider adding another criteria.
Oh, okay, great. Well, thank you for that. I think that would be fantastic. And just final comment is that this, it's very high level. It's there's not a lot of detail in this report, but just even the will and the vision here is everything that I've ever hoped for. So my personal gratitude for that. That's a really excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Banga?
Thank you. Question about this business license fees. Waived half of them anyway. Could you be able to tell me, would it be across the whole spectrum of businesses in Edmonton?
Councillor Banga, yes, it was intended for all businesses.
Okay. And then it's adding up to $5.6 million, right? Or close to thereof? Or where that number came from?
The 5.6 million was from the SOBA in terms of the 50% reduction in the number of businesses, but I'm going to let Ms. Petrin add to that answer.
Thank you.
Councillor Banga, in the spring SOBA, the budget was adjusted by 5.6 million to account for our forecasting related to COVID. The impact of the 50% waiving of the business license fees, we project if all businesses made the request between June and December of this year would equate to 3.1 million in 2020.
So 5.6 is for 2 years then?
Just this year.
Just this year, okay. And also, so there is no tax levy impact of this thing on anything?
That's correct. The adjustment related to tax levy was made in the spring SOBA in April.
Okay. And we don't know at this point in time how many, I guess, businesses are going to apply for it, or is it worth for them to do it, depending how much money they end up paying each year for the business license?
Correct. We don't know how many will make the request. We have been working in response to COVID in March, we have been working with businesses on a one-on-one to defer payments. Up to this point, we've had just under 300 businesses request deferral, but we are finding that they are now paying and getting their businesses licenses now that we're in relaunch. But however, the exact number of how many businesses we leverage this, I'm not sure.
So I guess let's say only a few of them apply for this deferral. Are we going to exhaust all the 5.6 million, or we're just stuck with 50?
The impact would be less. So if not all businesses made the request, the impact to revenue would be less than the 5.6 million projected in spring.
Okay, good. And the next question is about economic recovery grant. My first question about this thing is, this is 5.29 million, 40% to be spent this year, 60% next year. Like for businesses, depending who applies, how many apply, is there a requirement for them to invest some of their own money in there, or is it just apply and see who qualifies?
Councillor Benga, it is a matching grant, so we would expect that businesses match funds for the funds that are released.
Okay, so based on a lot of businesses are suffering, would they would probably be not in a position to spend more money. In this case, we would probably be end up helping the ones that are doing fairly good. Is that a thought? Because they're more, the ones that are doing good would probably want to invest a little more in there rather than the one they're not.
Councillor Benga, to Ms. McCabe's point earlier, we will be returning next week with a little bit more detail with respect to policy and how the grant would roll out, or sorry, during the next council meeting with your direction. But the criteria and the application would enable us to do a thorough review to understand the business need.
And Councillor Banga, that's part of some of the earlier questions about managing the risk, about supporting businesses that might eventually fail versus businesses that are going to be here for the long run. So there is a tension with this program, and administration is trying to do our best to be able to manage that risk for the corporation at the same time as deploy money in a really agile way to be able to help businesses that are working through the relaunch period right now.
Okay, thank you. I believe my time must be just about up.
It is, correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Katarina is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the report. And the grant program, matching or not, I think is a good idea. And the reduction in business license fees, certainly. But the area that I'm more interested in is the help that these businesses are going to need in meeting the requirements of health, and more so in PPE. Have we considered being sort of the facilitator for all these small businesses for their PPE requirements, that we, the city, procure them in the supply chain and then have them available to small businesses going forward? That's the first question.
Councillor, we did consider a number of things when we looked at the economic recovery program, and administration's recommendation is around the 5 that we've been focused on in terms of waiving business license fees by 50%, our process improvements and red tape reduction, our tactical responses, looking at our one-on-one program. And I know our one-on-one program is doing a number of things with businesses to help them in terms of the communications. And then this grant, and the grant program does allow for a business to be able to purchase the PPE, and perhaps Mr. Chase could add to that.
Yeah, in the purchasing, if I can narrow it down, that rather than all these businesses trying to source and compete with everyone else that's doing it in every other jurisdiction, my question is more so, have we thought about us facilitating that PPE program where we procure and they procure through us? Making it obviously much more competitive on volume rather than them doing it individually and them procuring from us at a cost, obviously.
Councillor Katarina, it's Adam. I've just been chatting with Ms. Pearson, and she might add to this in terms of supply chain challenges associated with that. So if Ms. Pearson's on the line, she can share some comment on that.
Yep.
Councillor Katarina, I agree with your concerns, but we are still working with the province to ensure a secure supply chain for us, as we could consider extending that to the businesses. But I just want to go on record, I'm not sure we could promise that at this current time.
Okay, yeah, and I'm not looking for any firm commitment, but that we at least consider that possibility. So that's fine with that. Stephanie, the other aspect of this, and I completely agree, is a reduction in red tape, and we've seen this in permitting and that sort of thing. But is that message filtering down to frontline staff? And without getting into many details, you'll recall the process that we've had to go through for the Beverly Farmers Market, a 20-year-old venture that had nothing but issues on getting a license from us to set up in a different location.
Councillor, the department remains committed to the process improvement work and the associated culture change with that work. And I do know a number of people within the department on the front line absolutely demonstrate that culture of being open for business, but then also responsibly making sure things that are safe for Edmontonians. So that continues to be a focus for the department. And also a continued focus is looking at development permits and building permits and doing an end-to-end process improvement review this year.
Okay, so the example that I gave you, and you've been involved in this, doesn't seem like that message is filtering down, that we need to do things differently and reduce that rules and regulations per se. But that example of a farmer's market in existence for 20 years, having difficulty getting a business license because they moved across the street, for example.
Councillor, I think we have a number of demonstrated improvements. Not every single situation is going to be perfect, and where it isn't perfect, we're absolutely committed to work with the applicant to help them navigate the system. At the end of the day, we need a system that is easy to navigate. I agree, there is absolutely room for process improvement there, and we remain committed to that process improvement work. I think the work that you've seen with patios about how the city has been really agile and been able to do a one-page application demonstrates what we can do, and we just need to strive for that in terms of all of our process improvement. And I know the leaders in the department are committed to that.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. I hope that things do get smoother and that we are prepared to not make concessions. Certainly safety is a priority, but some of the examples, it seems like we're not getting that message to frontline, that they're still going by the book, and things have changed considerably with COVID. And if we're serious about helping small businesses, there are things that we should be doing more of. And I thank you, Stephanie, for the work done with that particular example. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Katarina. Councillor Nickel.
Thank you, Mayor Iveson. So, Ms. McCabe, I just got to get this straight here. So we're going to take $5.6 million, correct? We're going to put it in a grant fund for 1 year.
It's 5.295 million, and we're going to put it in a grant program for 2 years. Phase 1 will run from June 10th to December 31st, and that's 40% of the grant, and phase 2 will run from January 1st to December 31st of 2021.
So I hope you have conversations with the chamber and everyone like this. Do you have any idea, because there is no metrics here, there's no targets, there's no tangible outcomes that I'm going to see in terms of what the grant program is going to deliver. Do you have any anticipation what the average grant size is going to be? Is it a first come, first served basis? How many jobs are we talking about rescuing here? What kind of companies? as we get into this now, you get to pick which companies get subsidy and support with this money.
So, Councillor Nicol, a good set of questions, and we will be returning if council agrees with the overall approach to this grant program. We will be returning to the next council meeting with a policy and some more of the details about how the grant will be deployed. You are correct that this will be. It won't be perfect, and there will be a level of subjectivity associated with this grant, as all grant programs do. But we're going to make sure that we put some measures and a process in place that has a shared accountability with the business community, that allows us to look at risk. And I think that this also shows how agile the government can be, that we're here today with something that's the first phase. And if council agrees with this in principle, then we'll go back and we'll come back with the next phase.
That's fine. That's fine, Ms. McCabe. That's great. But at only $5 million, and given that how many companies are in the city of Edmonton, how are we going to sit here and talk about the issue of fairness? He got a grant and she did not, or this group got a grant and that business did not. How is that defensible with regards to that everybody is sharing the pain?
Councillor Nicol, that's going to be through the evaluation and through the application process.
Let's take, for example, the question with regards to business licensing that Councillor Zidek brought up. So if every business in the city of Edmonton applied for business license relief, how much money is that?
Ms. Petrin, can you please confirm that number?
It would be 5.6 million if every business is assumed 50% off the business license.
5.6 million. And so where does that money come from? Where is that part of this program, or is that going to be a new source of funds that are going to be required?
Councillor Nicol, it won't be a new source of funds, and it's not part of the economic grant program. It was accounted for in the SOBA process. So through the SOBA process, we accounted for potential reduction in business license fees. And business license fees go two places: one, to cover the costs of administering the program, and then into general revenue. So the gap has already been accounted for in the SOBA process.
Because wouldn't it strike you as that we're going to have greater uptake versus less uptake on that program? What is your estimate? You must have an estimate if you're proposing the idea. How many businesses do you suspect or project are going to be taking us up on a business license for fee reduction?
So Ms. Petrin has indicated that approximately 300 to date have asked us for that, and we have over 30,000 businesses in Edmonton. So I think it really depends, and it's on the business to ask for the help. And so what we've accounted for in here is we've dealt with the risk of potentially everybody from January 1st to December 31st asking for that 50% waiving of the fee.
How much time do I have left, Mayor Iveson?
33 seconds.
Okay, I'll get right to the crux of it here then, so I don't have to go to a second round. Picking winners or losers. And so the question is, and Councillor Paquette raised this, is which group gets it and which group doesn't? Which industry gets support and which industry doesn't? And 5.6 million hardly seems to be sufficient cover and the size or the scope and scale and size of the problem. So I don't understand really clearly how this is going to make a material difference for Edmonton's overall economic outlook. Can you convince me otherwise?
So, Councillor Nicol, that's why we have the evaluation criteria in here, and we have heard from businesses that there is a gap right now with the existing programs from the provincial and federal governments, that there are very few, if no grant programs. And so we've heard from our businesses in Edmonton that this type of program would be helpful for them as they relaunch and as they pivot their companies.
Thank you, Mayor Iveson.
Are there further questions? Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Esslinger. Councillor Hamilton, go ahead.
Thank you. The discussion so far has been really great, and I'd like to thank you, Ms. McCabe and Mr. Chase, for a really, I would say, thorough contemplation of what we can do at the municipal level to support local businesses. My first question is somewhat picky, but how will, I know you're coming back to us in a couple of weeks with details. How do you anticipate access to either the grant program or the business license fee reduction would be accessed? Would it be online? Would they have to make a phone call? Could you speak a little bit to that?
We are anticipating that it would be online, but taking a GBA plus lens to the work, we would also be aware that not all folks may be able to access an online application, so we would be able to work with people on paper applications if needed, but we do hope to make it as seamless and easy as possible. We're hearing from the business community that they're looking for funds quickly, and so we will be as streamlined as we can in the process.
And have you set targets yet for what your anticipated turnaround for an application would be? We'll return next council meeting with those targets associated with the turnaround, but just know that we are committed to an agile program that is fast, because we understand that businesses are currently relaunching right now. And I appreciate that. I think one of the most backhanded compliments the federal government got was with respect to how quickly people actually got their CURB benefits and other benefits. Now, one of the things I noticed in the report, and I don't expect you to completely weigh in on this, Ms. McCabe, it might be something for Mr. Laughlin or the mayor to weigh in, is something in the What We Heard report, which related to some of the benefits that we've been trying to implement not being passed along. And I'm not really sure how, how we fix that, but that's obviously concerning when we're implementing programs that, and the federal and provincial government have been implementing programs that haven't actually made its way to the level of people that we were hoping it would. So I was hoping maybe to get some thoughts from you, and then maybe if anyone else has anything to say with respect to advocacy or policy changes or et cetera on that. We have heard that from some of the businesses that the provincial and federal government programs haven't been able to be accessed and or have been beneficial in the way that they anticipated. So I know in our advocacy, we continue to advocate to the other levels of government, but also as part of setting up our own program, is understanding that as we implement this, that we'll need to adjust as we go. So the 40% to the end of this year and the 60% in next year will allow for that. All right, thank you. That's the balance of my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Essinger.
Thank you, and great report, and I really appreciate that we've heard loud and clear from business that there's gaps, and we're trying to fill that. And I really wanted to say I appreciate using the GBA plus lens, and I would echo Councillor Paquette's comments on women looking to continue in business. I was hearing from the Alberta Women Entrepreneurs that many businesses were now pivoting or realigning. My question is on the grant criteria under the recovery grant. Under partner leverage, how do you measure that?
So again, those details will be included in the application phase, but we're anticipating that with respect to the partner grant, for example, that if there was a business association interested in doing a project that aligned with the grant, that their volunteer hours from their members, that those sorts of things might be quantifiable, and that would be a measure that we would use to evaluate the application.
Because if I read it correctly, there's a business association stream and a city stream, so they would both need some connection to another business group or just some of them?
That would just be one of several criteria that they could meet, so that would not be an expectation for all applicants.
Okay. And when we're looking at businesses that pivot or adapting, does that include those who are now creating new products in order to become more successful or changing service? Is that all included?
Correct, yes.
All right. And I appreciate the the information on risk. Those rest of my questions have been asked. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've got a procedural challenge because Councillor Henderson's the only person here, and it's hard to pass him the chair because he has the motion on the floor. So suggestion is that we suspend rules to allow the chair to not have to, so go to committee rules so the chair doesn't have to cede the chair, and the chair can also be a mover of a motion. Councillor Henderson can move that.
Yeah, I think just for this, do you want to do it for this item only?
Just
or
for the balance,
just
well, for the balance of the meeting, I think.
Okay, I will, okay, I'll move that.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Zadok. Is there any debate on that? Okay, please vote.
Yes.
I have 12 votes, Mr. Mayor. Or 13, we're good to go.
Please display the vote. That's carried. Thank you. Okay, then I'll start my time. Did you have an opportunity, clearly you consulted with the BIAs, did you have an opportunity to talk to the Chamber of Commerce about gaps that they perceive and how, and test these proposed approaches with that audience?
We have talked to the Chamber of Commerce as well as other groups as well, NAOP, the Edmonton's Independent Hospitality Group, as wide as we can to understand what the gaps are.
Okay, well, for what it's worth, we received a note from the Chamber of Commerce a few minutes ago indicating support for the program on the premise that many businesses are falling through the cracks of existing government support programs. The Economic Recovery Grant will help businesses who need further support and assist in addressing the barriers that are preventing many businesses from reopening or returning employees to work. And then they offered to, assist with design and further feedback. So very, very helpful and constructive message of support from the Chamber of Commerce responding to your efforts. So that's one piece of feedback we've already received. So is it fair to simplify that there are really three pieces to this? The reduction in the fees, the grants to individual businesses, and then the grants to BIAs to do BIA-specific programming?
Yes, but I'd also add that we're continue to do process improvement and cutting red tape so that when somebody is investing in Edmonton, that it's an easy process for them to be able to work with the city administration.
Sorry, you're absolutely right. That's on the non-monetary side, but it is material for business, times money. So it's four-pronged. That point's very well taken. On the waiving fees, just in the answer to the questions, I've become confused. Are we proposing to waive fees entirely for up to half of the businesses, or are we proposing to reduce by half the fees for all businesses should they apply?
50% of reduction of their fees from January 1st to December 31st. So 50% of the fee if a business would like.
So we're not waiving the fee entirely. We are allowing and budgeting for all businesses potentially to apply for a 50% reduction in what's owing.
All businesses that have their business license renewal between January 1st and December 31st.
Which is about half of them?
Ms. Petrin would have to answer that question.
Okay, well, presuming it there's some kind of normal distribution there, but we've got the money in hand for everyone who's paid up to this point, essentially.
We do, except for the ones that have perhaps asked for a waive.
And we would grant that using this as the source of funds?
Correct.
Okay. And just to track the bouncing ball, these are the dollars that became available through some of the restructuring and belt tightening at EEDC, some of the seasonal shutdown pieces, and pulling some of our resources out of there.
That's the grant program. The business license program was through the SOBA process, and some of the forecasting that we did was we were anticipating that there'd be less businesses applying for their fees, and so we were able to take advantage of the fact that that isn't the case.
Okay, so there's over and above resources. And then the other dollars for the grant program came from the reduction in our office budgets.
That's correct.
Okay, and it's just, I think it's important to track that, you know, we've tried to tighten our belts in the operations of the offices, the elected officials, and turned around so that we can fund a program for business relief. I think I just don't want to lose that thread, because we were quite intentional about that through the SOBA budget process as well.
It's more than half of the businesses we have 36,000 business licenses, and 21,000 will renew from now until December.
Okay, so that will make a big difference for them, and we'd look to extend that into next year potentially if things are still in rough shape.
We'd bring back that through the fall budget adjustment process.
Okay, is there a roll-up number to what all of it, if it's all drawn down, the grants and the business relief, what that adds up to?
Not right now, but I could get that for you relatively quickly.
Okay, I think that plus the tax shifting that we did amounts to, you know, notwithstanding our other challenges, a fairly significant gesture, more than gesture, but tangible note of relief for our business community that I think we want to communicate and effectively so that they're aware of what we're trying to do for them, notwithstanding that substantial relief from provincial and federal programs continues to be needed to maintain employment and support demand through stimulus and so on and so forth. So I'm out of time, but really appreciate the work here. So
move a second round.
we should have suspended that rule too, just to make life easier. But Councillor Henderson has moved a second round. I'll second it. Is there unanimous consent for a second round? Any objections to another round of questions? No? Okay, then by unanimous consent, we're in the second round. Councillor Cartmel, go ahead. Councillor Cartmel?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I've heard feedback from a couple of different places. Edmonton Global has talked about in a couple of different sessions about a move to more protectionism with respect to international trade. But I've also heard that there might be a possibility of lightening up interprovincial trade barriers and you know, as a corresponding reaction to that. Have we heard anything about a reduction in interprovincial trade or trade movements or barriers?
Councillor Cartmel, we continue to work with Edmonton Global on an ongoing basis, and we have heard some of those things as well from Edmonton Global. But at this point, I'm not able to speak to the details of that. Perhaps Mr. Ross could add.
We don't have those specifics, but I think there is their AGM coming up very shortly here. I believe there will be some things put forward to the shareholders just on some of their activities. But certainly your point, Councillor Cartmel, on looking to those interprovincial trade barriers as a way to certainly look at another pivot point for how we can start to grow some investment in certainly in Alberta and into the Edmonton region as the international market starts to maybe ramp up a lot slower over time.
Yeah, or tighten up in the short term. So I want to move a bit to the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago about the innovation ecosystem, the innovation authority. And I guess my view is that I'd like us to be known as an innovation city as opposed to a city with an innovation authority. So have we explored some of those things? I know it's early days for that, and that organization is not fully stood up. But have we talked about the opportunity for innovative solutions to what are going to be some very interesting and challenging problems?
Councillor Cartmel, absolutely. The innovation entity is meant to be led by the community, not led by the city. So I think some of the work that you're speaking about being known for being an innovative city would be part of our place brand strategy work. And I'm not sure if Ms. Owen would like to add to that.
Happy to. A big part of the work that we will be undertaking now that EEDC has been reconfigured is to position Edmonton as a place to do business, and all of that personality trait of innovation will be central to that.
So as part of that, I mean, it's one thing to say it, I suppose. It's another thing to demonstrate it. So we talked about the concept of the city as a lab. We talked about the concept of an innovation officer or an innovation office. Councillor Knack spoke a lot about that. We've talked about, the adjustment to procurement processes that might allow more innovative solutions to make their way to the city of Edmonton, and for various companies or organizations to use the city of Edmonton as their first customer. I've even had some conversations about us using some of our reserve dollars as investments in those very promising organizations to give them a boost forward. Are we exploring those concepts? And I guess more precisely, how fast and how quickly are we exploring those concepts? There's real opportunities right now.
Councillor Cartmel, I think that the city has demonstrated through this COVID crisis that we can be agile and innovative, the patios as an example. And I do know on the procurement side, Ms. Pearson's been working with the province to look at procurement barriers. So the city will have to continue to work with the new innovation entity to make sure we set up those conditions for success for the city to be able to be used as a lab, and for us to continue to be innovative in our approaches to service delivery.
So I'll note in the, again, in attachment 4, there's several principles listed, economic considerations. And one of those is demonstrating empathy and equity. And I'll quote from the report. It says, "Do not increase the property tax burden on existing businesses." That seems out of sync with our latest operation budget adjustment, where we're looking at a 3.2% increase in property taxes next year. So I'm curious about the synchronicity between this work, economic development work, and looking at all the opportunities to enhance our economic environment, and the synchronicity with other efforts, with our capital budget, with our operating budget, with our procurement system, with our various agencies. And I don't want to be too nitpicky about that, but Councillor Katarina raised the issue where we seem to be out of sync with some of our frontline people in terms of doing everything we possibly can to enable business to thrive. Is there work, and what is the work that synchronizes all of those efforts into a very focused economic recovery ideal?
Councillor Cartmel, it's Adam. I want to touch on the reference to the tax increase identified in future years. I'll point to, again, a 4-year operating budget approved by council at the end of 2018. At each point in time, through discussions in the various fall supplementary operating budget adjustments, there have been downward adjustments to reflect either the economic environment that we're in, or in this case, the pandemic that we're in. So while those numbers have been identified, it by no means means that administration is planning to come back with a tax levy increase that reflects that. I can't make that firm commitment here today because, per our discussion yesterday, we don't know what level of support we're going to be getting from other orders of government in terms of supporting some of the real revenue impacts that we've experienced as a municipality. That's also coupled with service level discussions that we have to have with council related to the services that are currently offered. So I just don't want to leave the impression that what we've identified for future year tax levy increase are absolute, and every effort has been made to drive that down. In terms of the efforts around open for business and driving the economy, ELT is very committed, and through the great work of Stephanie and her team, we are very attuned to making sure that we're doing everything we can to be open for business, to be innovative. And I'll also say that we are in the process of adjusting our approach to corporate strategy, and that includes a stronger lens on how we create consolidated, if I could call that, innovation thinking, and strong connections to each of the departments to ensure that that's ingrained in our day-to-day. Culture change does take time, but we are pushing really hard to make that happen.
So thank you, Mr. Laughlin. I appreciate those comments, and I do agree this is great work. This is a great step forward. And from your comments, I take comfort that there is some synchronicity in the efforts of administration. So I appreciate that. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on this? Anyone wishing to speak to it?
Mr. Mayor, your earlier question, Ms. McCabe has that information.
It's difficult to quantify the tax relief program, but this program could be up to $10.8 million.
Okay. That was the number I had in my head, was just under 11. So that's material, hopefully, across 36,000 businesses. Won't be enough for some of them, but it will help others, even just indicating the city has confidence in them and has their back and wants to see them come back for the good of the city. So anyone wishing to speak to it? Not seeing any, then
quickly, if that's okay.
Sure, Councillor Paquette, go ahead.
All right. I just wanted to, again, reiterate my gratitude to administration for bringing this forward. And I understand that administration has been asked a number of questions today that simply at this point in time are not answerable. This is obviously a foray into this. Details will be added later. And this is very high level, and it's important to understand that. And I think for anyone reporting this, that might be an important thing to consider as well, because if there are unanswered questions, it's because we are now working on them. So this is something that's going to help businesses in a way that they've been asking for help. And some people might say, well, why are businesses, if they've already received, and obviously, but the simple answer is that without any sort of economic activity in the city, everyone suffers. So this is an approach that is aligned with everything else that the city is doing. There are multi-pronged approaches here. There are a lot of balls in the air, so to speak. And just rest assured to anyone who is wondering about this, my belief is that we are focusing on the holistic approach that ensures health for the city for everyone. And this is an important step toward that. And understand we need targets, we need metrics, we need outcomes, we need this business sector to be paid attention to, we need that business sector to be paid attention to, and so on and so forth. And I believe that everyone's questions will be answered as we move forward and this begins to be more fully developed. And again, deep appreciation to administration. This has been such an unprecedented time. Everyone has been burning the midnight oil. And for that, I am now and will always be grateful. So,
thank you. Any other comments? Not seeing any, then please vote on the recommendation for the fee waiving.
I've got 12 votes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we're short one.
Yes. Thank you. We have 13 votes.
Thank you. Display the vote, and that's carried unanimously. Thanks so much. So we've still got the interim housing recommendations and financial implications. We've got neighborhood renewal, sidewalk reconstruction. We've got the motions pending, but perhaps we can tidy those up. And we've got the bylaws from yesterday, and we've still got 9.2. And we don't have consensus about continuation of the meeting at 1:30. I understand some folks are unavailable. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that, actually, can we take a 3-minute recess? I just want to confer with the city manager and the clerks on agenda management here. So if there's no objection, can we just take a couple of minutes rather than me doing this online? Let me take it offline. It'll go a little faster. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
Really quickly, I wondered if 6.4 being, although extremely important, because it's receipt of information, it might be pushed down the road a little bit too.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is if we can come back to sidewalks later, and if we can find a good place where we can focus on the housing conversation and give it its due rather than rush it in any way, then we may be able to manage everything this morning. I just want to confer with admin on some options on that and look ahead to the next couple of agendas. So so thank you for that suggestion. Let me just take 3 minutes here and input that along with a couple other considerations, and we'll come back to you with a recommendation for how to try to finish this meeting this morning. So stand by, please. everyone's still here. Councillor Katarina?
I'm here.
Great. Councillor Zadig?
Here.
Super. Councillor Essinger?
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
Here.
Great. Councillor Henderson?
Yeah, here.
Yes, here in person. Councillor Knack?
Yes, he's still here.
Super. Councillor McKean?
Here.
Councillor Nickel?
Here.
Councillor Paquette?
I am here in the first person.
Councillor Walters?
Present.
Councillor Banga?
Here.
Councillor Carmel?
Here.
Okay, that's everybody. So here's what we have come up with. First suggestion is that we postpone interim housing recommendations and financial implications to the June 8th council meeting. We believe there'll be bandwidth to do it justice there. Second recommendation is that we postpone the neighborhood renewal report to come back with prior to or with fall scuba, because it would affect potentially next construction season and how we might pay for neighborhood renewal. It's locked in for this year with the approval of scuba, so there's not much we can do between now and then, so there's no urgency with that. So we would postpone neighborhood 6.5 to come with scuba in the fall. And then on the premise that I understand both of the motions pending are withdrawn, or can be withdrawn, then all we have left is the bylaws and tidy up on what we want to do on 9.2. So that's actually manageable, I think, to get, that gives us an hour. Yeah, the bylaw will take 5 minutes, and then that gives us an hour to sort out 9.2. So if there's any strong feedback, well, let's take the motion and then we can take feedback.
I'll move that we, that 6.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, before, sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Can you repeat on the housing? I cut out here and I didn't hear that
Sure.
at all.
Sure. What we'll do is we'll put it in the form of a motion, then we can take questions and debate the motion. So Councillor Henderson will move.
That housing be postponed until the June 8th meeting, and that neighborhood renewal sidewalk reconstruction be postponed until SCBA in the fall.
Second.
Okay, that's seconded by Councillor Paquette. Is that clear to everyone? Any questions?
Should I refer the sidewalk one, or do you want just a straight postponement?
I'd actually like you to refer it back
Okay,
to administration. That way it doesn't stay in the system and he can.
So I will amend, what I meant to move was that on 6.5 be referred back to administration to return at SCBA in the fall.
Okay. I can't see the
Mr.
chat
Mayor?
right now. Yes, go ahead, Councillor McKean.
Yeah, sorry. The only other thing I would say is if we had some clear resolution or date on Councillor Zadik's motion, that would be great. I don't know if everyone's offices were getting them, but I was getting a lot of email from concerned people and advocacy groups about that potential decision. So I think we have to let people know when that might return for a decision.
Okay, just thank you for that. Just to be clear, Councillor Henderson's motion doesn't change the timing of that, but I also had saw some indication yesterday that Councillor Zadik was prepared to withdraw that. So we're gonna come to that in a moment. So noted, and we'll just hold on tight for a sec, okay? Any other questions?
I think Councillor Zadik may have questions or wants to speak.
Councillor Zadik, do you have comments on the postponement of 6.4 and the referral of 6.5?
No, I was just indicating in the chat that I'm happy to postpone my motion, but I just wouldn't mind 2 seconds to explain why. So
okay, well, I will come to you when we're at that point in the agenda.
Yeah, definitely. Just because I was called on by the clerk, I spoke up now. But
okay,
but I've okay.
Okay. On postponement of 6.4 and referral of 6.5, please vote.
Yes.
I have 11, 12, 13 votes.
Thank you. Display the vote. That's carried. Okay, so those are gone. We've got the bylaw to deal with now, then we'll come to motions pending and see what we're gonna do with those, and then we'll go back in private on 9.2. So bear with us here as we do this in order. Councillor Henderson on the bylaws that were added,
Mr. Mayor,
7.2.
I'm prepared to move first reading of 7.2.
I'll second that. Are there any questions? Those are the bylaws we added yesterday.
It just allows the naming.
Just for clarity, it's just one bylaw.
Oh,
It's just
bylaw.
it's one bylaw, and it allows the naming committee to do the work we asked them to do yesterday.
Vis-a-vis potential namings. Okay. Any questions on that? Not seeing any. Please vote on first reading.
Yes.
I have 12 votes. Who are we missing? We're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Display the vote, please. That's carried.
I'll move second reading of 7.2.
Second. Please vote.
Yes.
Display the vote.
Can you just give me?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. We have 13.
That's carried.
I will move consideration of a third reading of 7.2.
To allow third reading to proceed, please vote.
Yes.
We have 13.
Display the vote. Carried.
And I will move third reading of bylaw 19635.
Second. Please vote on third reading.
Yes.
I have 13.
Display the vote. Carried. Okay, we're now at the motions pending. Councillor Zadek on 8.1.
Thank you. So I'll be careful not to introduce this because I will withdraw it. I just want to say that the intention behind this motion was time sensitive to inform a report that's coming in June anyways, seeing as we can't get to it this morning, and that it likely would be June before we could get to this topic. I'll withdraw because our time is valuable and it's essentially going to be a moot point now.
Okay, so the notice is withdrawn. Thank you, and there are other reports coming forward, so thank you for that. And then Councillor Cartmel on 8.2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put this over to the next meeting. I'm not quite ready to withdraw it yet.
Okay, so notice is, it's held over now to June 8th. So that clears, I think, all of the public business. So
I will move to go in private.
Back to 9.2 under section 21, 24, and 25 of FOIP again. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Seconder? I'll second it.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Councillor Hamilton. Okay. Please vote to go back in private to complete 9.2.
Yes.
I have 11 votes.
Waiting on 2.
Who are we missing? Who are we missing? We're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Display the vote, please, and that's carried. Okay, we'll just give the clerks a moment to go offline, and we'll get back into it.
We're back on.
Okay, I need a
Everything.
motion to extend just to complete.
I'll move to extend to complete this final item.
Seconded by Councillor Banga. Is there any objection to extending to complete? No, then by unanimous consent, orders are extended. I'll move that item 9.2 be referred back to administration to prepare a public recommendation on LRT project prioritization and associated light rail vehicle purchase strategies to accelerate use of the balance of transit infrastructure grants previously committed to Edmonton over and above the dollars allocated to West and Blatchford extensions, as well as any additional funds that become available through transit stimulus and or long-term provincial and federal transit funding commitments. And two, that a special city council meeting be scheduled for Monday, June 1st at 9:30 a.m. to hear this matter.
Second.
Any comments?
Just a quick thought, Mr. Mayor. Could we not
Councillor
just
Henderson?
extend this meeting? Would that be easier than calling a special meeting?
Can we, it would be easier for us if we just have to set everything all up new.
Okay,
please.
I just was a question.
Any further comments, questions? No? Okay. Please vote.
Yes.
I have 13 votes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Display the vote. That's carried unanimously. Are there any notices of motion? Oh, we should probably also move that 9.2 still be kept in private, subject to 21, 24, and 25, though.
I will move that.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Seconder?
Second.
Councillor McKean, thank you very much. Please vote on keeping 9.2 in private, notwithstanding the referral.
I closed that. I'm a yes.
I have 11.
Yes.
I have 13 votes.
Display the vote. That's carried. Call one more time. Any notices of motion? Not seeing any. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your perseverance. See you tomorrow and then see you on Monday.